let's dive into the incredible story of the United Kingdom. We're talking about a nation that was literally forged by invaders, completely rebuilt by industry, and is always reinventing itself. From what felt like mythical beginnings all the way to its place in our modern world, I mean, this is a journey of some seriously epic transformation.
And really, this is the big question we're tackling today. Think about it. To the mighty Roman Empire, Britain was practically a myth. Just this foggy, mysterious island full of barbarians who did something they found completely shocking. They drank milk. So how on earth did that fabled land go from being a legend on the edge of the map to a global superpower that would literally shape the world as we know it?
So to really get a grip on the UK, we've got to go way, way back. I'm talking about its most ancient foundations. This story doesn't kick off with kings and magnificent castles, nope. It starts with the prehistoric hunter-gatherers and the very first farmers who started to tame this wild land.
I mean, just look at this timeline. The sheer scale it's just immense. We are talking about almost 1,000,000 years of history. The big turning points? Well, you've got the shift from a nomadic, wandering life to settled farming, which totally changed the landscape. And then you see these incredible structures like Stonehenge pop up, which tells us they had complex rituals and a really organized society. And then came a huge technological leap, moving from stone tools to bronze and then to iron. I mean, that was absolutely revolutionary. Suddenly you have better tools for farming, much more effective weapons for fighting, and all of this really set the stage for the Celtic tribes, the very people the Romans were about to meet. Okay, but here's the thing. This island's identity was never going to be forged in isolation. Not a chance. The next huge chapter in this story is all about conflict. It's a story of one invasion after another, and each one left a permanent, indelible mark on the language, the culture, and even the DNA of the people living there. So, in 43 AD, Emperor Claudius finally pulls off what Julius Caesar couldn't. The Romans roll in, and they were, above all, builders and organizers. They gave Britain its first real cities, a whole network of roads connecting the island, and a structured system of government. And yes, it's true, they were absolutely horrified that the locals drank milk. They just couldn't get over it. Right, so after the Romans packed up and left, the invasions didn't stop. New waves arrived. You had the Anglo-Saxons and then the Vikings, and each one brought something totally different to the table. The Romans, they were all about order and engineering. But the Vikings, they brought a whole new energy of trade, a completely different influence on the language, and this really powerful belief in formal law that would completely shape everything that came next.
You know, the Vikings get this reputation as just terrifying raiders, and they definitely started that way. But they ended up as settlers. They controlled this huge chunk of England called the Danelaw. And their influence, it's still with us right now, every single day. Just think about common words like sky, husband, or even the day of the week Thursday. That's literally Thor's day. Plus, their deep-seated respect for a formal legal system, that left a massive legacy. And then, 1066. Probably one of the most famous dates in all of English history. The Norman conquest wasn't just another invasion, it was a complete system reboot. It literally replaced the entire English aristocracy with a French-speaking one and locked the feudal system into place, changing the social and political fabric of the country for hundreds of years. Okay, so now with the Normans in charge, the long, messy process of forging a single, unified kingdom really gets underway. This whole era is just packed with rebellion, intense power struggles, and major reforms that would slowly but surely lay the groundwork for the modern state we know today. And, you know, sometimes something amazing can come from something awful. Take King John. He was so notoriously terrible that his own barons finally had enough. They rebelled and forced him to sign the Magna Carta. And this was revolutionary. For the very first time, it put into writing the idea that nobody, not even the king, was above the law. Let's jump forward a few centuries to another king who is absolutely larger than life, Henry VIII. His personal obsession, and it really was an obsession, with having a male heir spiraled into a full-blown national crisis. The Pope refused to grant him a divorce, so what does Henry do? He doesn't just change his wife, he changes the entire country's religion. He just breaks away from Rome and creates his own church, the Church of England. Just incredible.
The 17th century rolls around, and it brings one of the most genuinely shocking events in British history. A brutal civil war breaks out between the king and parliament, and it ends with the unimaginable, the public execution of a king, Charles I. I mean, this was such a radical moment. They temporarily got rid of the monarchy entirely, proving that even the highest power in the land could be challenged and defeated. But then, after all that conflict, came a moment of creation, not destruction. In 1707, the Acts of Union politically merged the Kingdom of England and the Kingdom of Scotland. And this wasn't just some flimsy alliance. This was the actual birth of a brand new entity, Great Britain. So, the kingdom is now politically unified, and a completely different kind of power starts to emerge. We're heading into the 18th and 19th centuries now, and this is where Britain transforms from a kingdom into a true global superpower. All of it fueled by the smoke, the sweat, and the steam of the Industrial Revolution. It's honestly hard to wrap your head around just how fast things changed during this time. The population of Britain doubled in only 70 years. This wasn't just gradual growth, it was a population explosion. And it was all driven by these new industries that were pulling millions of people out of the countryside and into cities that were expanding at a dizzying rate. And a boom like that? Well, it had massive, massive consequences. On one hand, it created the modern city as we know it, but it also brought terrible slums and just horrific working conditions. All this industry fueled the expansion of a global empire, and it created a brand new class of super wealthy industrialists. But eventually, all that inequality sparked the social reform movements that began fighting for the rights of everyday workers and the poor. This was it, the absolute peak of British power. The empire was so vast, so geographically widespread, we're talking control over about a quarter of the world's land and people, that the saying, "the sun never set on it," was literally true. It was a global system of trade, culture, and military power on a scale the world had never seen before. But here's the thing about empires. They don't last forever. The 20th century would force the UK to completely rethink everything about itself. It was a century defined by the trauma of 2 world wars, the painful loss of its empire, and the struggle to create a whole new kind of society back home. And this quote from Winston Churchill, "Blood, toil, tears, and sweat," it just perfectly captures the spirit of that time. The first half of the century was completely dominated by the incredible sacrifice of 2 world wars. And while victory did come, it came at a staggering, almost unthinkable cost, both in human lives and in national wealth. It left the country exhausted, but in the end, victorious. The years right after the wars brought some of the most profound changes yet. As the empire started to be dismantled, a process that really kicked off with India's independence in 1947, a new focus turned inward, back home. The government set about building a comprehensive welfare state. The most famous part of this, of course, was the creation of the National Health Service in 1948, which made this incredible promise to care for every citizen from cradle to grave. It was a fundamental shift in what the nation stood for. And the rest of the 20th century, leading right into our own, it was just a whirlwind of constant reinvention. You had the cultural explosion of the 1960s, the deeply divisive economic reforms under Margaret Thatcher in the 80s, the absolutely historic vote to leave the European Union in 2016, and then truly the end of an era, with the death of the nation's longest reigning monarch, Queen Elizabeth II. So after everything, all the history, the invasions, the empire, the wars, what's the UK's most significant, most enduring legacy? You could make a very strong case that it's the English language itself, a language that was hammered into shape on the anvil of history by Romans, Anglo-Saxons, and Vikings, and has somehow become the common tongue for the entire world of science, business, and culture. And that leaves us with one final big question. We've seen how this is an island nation that is always reinventing itself. Its identity has been defined by conquest, then by industry, then by empire, and then by reform. So the question for all of us now is, after all of that, what comes next?